Welcome and good evening to everybody who's joined us. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is going to be about female coach and overcoming self-doubt. And Karen Hughes will be talking about her experiences with Bex Garlick, who is the national the National Coach Development Lead for Women and Girls at the Football Association. So just to confirm, we'll be answering your questions after Karen has had a brief conversation with Bex and also Paul Connolly, who's joining us tonight. Just to go over her experiences since starting coaching and completing her introduction to coaching football course. The chat function will be active throughout the session. It's always really interactive, so please feel free to write in there and also to ask any questions that you would like answered, which we will try to answer as many of those as possible after the chat. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sarah Collins and I work for Women in Football, and I'm delighted to be your host this evening. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. And if you've tuned in before, thank you very much for coming back. Finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the WIF YouTube channel, and it will be available over the coming days to revisit. And just also to highlight the fact that we do have other webinars on the channel as well for you to have a look through. If you haven't already seen them, please feel free to investigate. We'll be using the hashtag #WIFwebinar tag, so please tag us and get the conversation going. If I can now just briefly introduce our guests for tonight. Karen Hughes. Karen was just a parent on the sidelines watching her son play football. She became interested in getting more involved, so started volunteering. After completing the EE Playmaker by England Football and the introduction to coaching football even, Karen is now regularly coaching at Freestyle Urban Soccer in Chorley and manages the under-7s within the East Lancashire Football Alliance. Karen has also just started studying for her C licence. Bex Garlick has worked at the Football Association for nearly 13 years, and as I just said, she's currently the National Coach Development Lead for Women and Girls. In her role, she leads a team of regional coach development officers to recruit and deploy more females into coaching grassroots football, and also to support and develop existing female coaches, such as Karen, levels 0 to 2. Paul Connolly is a coach, developer, mentor at England Hockey, and also a UK sport mentor. He's worked at Sports Coach UK, now UK Coaching, for 17 years, supporting a wide range of NGBs with their coaching programmes. He has a wealth of experience developing coaches to achieve their potential across a variety of sports, including football. He continues to work in other sports as well. Paul has been involved in the Women in Football coaching programme supported by PepsiCo since September, working with a group of grassroots coaches who have completed the FA Introduction to Coaching Football course through a bursary funded by PepsiCo. So if I just now hand over to Bex, who will take over the conversation with Karen.
Thanks, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. I did drop a message in the chat box just to, if you want to introduce yourself and say hello to us. If you're struggling to find the chat, there should be a panel at either the bottom or the top of your screen. And if you just click chat, and then when you're sending your message, just click one, and then everyone will be able to see it. So you can all say hello to each other. That chat is going to be open for for all of the evening. And if you want to ask any questions at any point, Sarah and Paul are kind of going to just manage that chat for us and just feed in any questions either throughout or at the end when we jump to the Q&A section. Sarah's obviously introduced myself. And yeah, I'm delighted to be here this evening, especially on the week of International Women's Day, which, if you're not aware, is tomorrow. I think it's clever that they've gone with doing this tonight, because there's always lots of different things going on the actual day. So yeah, a nice introduction on the eve of International Women's Day 2023. One of the key hashtag that is been used this year for International Women's Day is around embracing equity. And as we go through the call and towards the end of the evening, I'm going to share some of the opportunities that we offer through the Football Association and through the team that I lead, around how we are supporting female coaches. And when we talk about equity, I think we seem to be using this word equity rather than equality, because equality is where everything is equal and everything's the same for everyone. Equity is more around, actually, there might be some different opportunities for different people, depending on where they're at their journey, and perhaps having been underrepresented or having not been posed with those opportunities previously, they need some more opportunities to be presented to them at this moment in time. So I will be sharing the work that our team do a little bit later on. But first of all, I want to kind of introduce Karen and tell you a bit of a backstory about Karen. It's the first time I met her, she actually made me cry, which my housemates would probably tell you that's not a difficult thing to do, because I cry at anything. But yeah, on International Women's Day, we often talk about women who've inspired us, and I was definitely inspired and honoured to go and watch Karen work a few months ago. I got an email from our marketing team saying they were going out to do some promotional filming. They needed one of the coach development officers to go and support the event, and there wasn't anyone available. Everyone locally to Karen was kind of on leave or had other things in that weekend. So living in Manchester, and Karen being in Chorley with her team, I kind of said, well, I'll go and do it. So I think I shocked Karen, because we tend to do this. We didn't tell anyone we were turning up. So I've rocked up in my full England kit, and Karen's there already nervous that she's going to be filmed, and I've turned up. But just watching Karen that morning as we did the filming, just the way she interacted, engaged with the players, everything that we talk about and that we're probably going to talk about tonight around transferable skills and the skills that lots of females can bring to coaching. Karen, that was just like in front of my eyes as I was watching Karen, and the way that she spoke to the kids and differentiated the activities for the players, and just how she made them all feel involved, despite them probably all being of varying abilities, as I'm sure that anyone who's on this call tonight as a coach will find that they're not all the same ability. So we've got to try and adapt. And she was just amazing at that. I think I guessed in the first few minutes what her job probably was. And again, we'll pick up on that as we go through. So yeah, Karen, you are definitely someone who I'll be thinking of tomorrow on International Women's Day, because you are such an inspiration. And I know you probably sat there thinking, stop saying that, Bex, because I don't think I am, but you definitely are. So thank you for joining us. And when myself, Paul and Sarah were speaking about these webinars, and I know Paul has supported many of the coaches who've gone through the I2CF on other webinars previous. But again, one of the things that came out and that comes out across all of our work, our coach development officers hear this all the time, is that many of the female coaches they speak to are just full of self-doubt. They lack confidence. One of the things that females will say to us when we ask them if they want to get involved in coaching is either I don't think I'll be very good, or I don't know enough about football. Other people know more about football than I do. So those are the common things that come out. So I just wanted to give Karen the opportunity to share her story, share some of her challenges that she's had around that self-doubt piece. But again, just an opportunity for her to hopefully inspire you in how she's overcome some of those challenges. So without further ado, Karen, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi guys, it's really nice to be here. Thanks so much, Bex and Paul and Sarah. Yeah, I'm a mum of twins, both 11, just both started high school, and my son plays football. And obviously that's what I used to do. I used to sit on the sidelines and just watch my son. I'm a primary school teacher now, and previously I was a nurse. I've been married for, 18 years, and I've been with my husband for nearly 30 years. So we live in Chorley. I'm just a regular person doing a regular job and trying to help people do the right thing and grow individuals. That's all I've wanted to do. So that's just a little bit about me.
Thanks, Karen. And like I said, we are going to explore your journey as we go through, but I just wanted to probably jump back to the start, really, and tell us why on earth you decided you wanted to get involved in coaching.
My son, essentially, and some of his friends that were on the team. I was a parent on the sideline, and to be fair, when he first started playing football, I didn't go and watch him very often because obviously he's got his twin sister. And then when I started to go, I started to see things that I didn't quite agree with, I didn't quite like, and I was listening to the parents, and boy, did they grumble. The club that I work for, the owner asked if anybody would be interested in volunteering, so I decided to do that. I kind of put myself forward and said, well, what do you think? You know, how fit do you need to be? What knowledge do you need? How does it work? And essentially the ethos of my club, or the club that I volunteer for, is all about the individual child and building them up as a good person. It's not necessarily just about those football skills. Obviously that comes into it and that plays into it as we move along. So because of what I didn't like, because of I had reservations about what I was seeing, then that's why I became coach, or that's why I started to volunteer. As time moved on, Paul, who runs the club, suggested that I do the EE Playmaker, and he felt like I'd be a good coach, obviously bringing in my primary school teaching and some of my nursing experiences, because as a nurse and teacher and mum and wife and goodness knows what else goes on in everybody's lives, you become more observant of things that are going on and a slightly more aware. So that's why I started, and that's the beginning of my journey.
Thanks, Karen. I just picked up on two things that you said there. So the first two questions that you asked the club was, how fit do I need to be, and what knowledge do I need?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think again that just shows like almost that self-doubt already starting to creep into where you're checking, are you actually the right person to be getting involved in this? And I think when we speak to clubs and how they can better recruit maybe females to take that step over the sidelines and into coaching, I think, you know, if you are a representative from a club on this call, like, what is the language that you use, and how do you promote coaching opportunities, or how can we better promote coaching opportunities, so that before Karen or coaches even needing to ask that question, we're already giving them a perception of what coaching is. So for example, like, we're looking for coaches who are brilliant at engaging with kids, who can help individual players develop across like all the different aspects of their development, not just the football. So I think it's the language and the wording that we use when we're recruiting for those coaches, which again might just limit the questions that like people like Karen have probably got in their head once they're wanting to get involved. When you went into it, Karen, what were you expecting?
I have no idea. Fun, ultimately. I think you know, my children were growing up. We all have our own hobbies at home. We all like being outdoors. We're all quite sporty anyway. You know, I come from a martial arts, volleyball, netball background. So having that kind of, you know, pushed yourself forward. But ultimately I wanted to make a difference, I think. what I saw, I wasn't happy with. My son, who still plays football, has got profound dyslexia and dyscalculia, and he has difficulties with processing. He has difficulties from left to right, listening to a lot of information. You know, there were some children that we have at our club that are obviously, you know, require special educational needs. So they've got ADHD or they're on the autistic spectrum. And some of those children were part of that team. And I could see that both from as a parent and also as a teacher. And I guess I just wanted to make that difference, you know, make sure that those children felt included, rather than just sitting out on the sidelines and being the sub at the start of the games, which is what was happening all the time, because the coach at that time, kind of, sometimes it was brilliant, don't get me wrong. You know, I would never disrespect another coach, and that's not what I'm here to do. But it's just, you know, as an observer, you could see that there was too much information being given. And that wasn't differentiated. You know, at the beginning of a game, all the kids want to do is just go out there and play. They don't want an overload of information about which Premiership footballer does this and which footballer does that. And a lot of children that play don't necessarily watch Premiership football either, so they don't really always associate with what they're doing. You know, and that's what I found. A lot of our, you know, our male colleagues and some of our female colleagues, me now included, you know, I watch football, Premiership football, women's and men's all the time, so I can associate you know, that with those players. And sometimes I do throw in those names, but for some of the children that we deal with, they're not aware of that, so they don't know what we're talking about. So yeah, you know, it's just making sure that we're on their level. So I wanted to make that difference really, and try and incorporate some of the learnings that I've got with my own son into that day-to-day coaching.
Yeah, I think some of the best coaches that I've seen or that I've worked with over the years, they almost look beyond the football, and just really look at the development of the young people or the adults that they're working with. And I think again, it's just that perception of what we think coaching is, but the reality of what it actually is, and what those people, what those players really want from us as coaches. And yeah, I think some of the best ones I've worked with have almost looked beyond the football. The football's almost secondary, because we've got to know them, and we've got to help them as people before we can help them as players. So yeah, first few weeks, months of coaching, how are you feeling once you got into it?
I think, to start off with, when I first started, I started with the under sevens, so I was quite comfortable, because I was actually working in year one at that time. So and it's all about, you know, promoting those games, those fundamental skills, and delivering that. Within 4 weeks and a week of qualifying as a level one, yeah, the coach decided to hang his manager decided to hang his boots up on the under 11s, which was the under 10s at the time. And Paul, being Paul, said, how do you fancy it? Your son's on the team, you can go and watch him play, you can help him. Yeah, that was fine to start off with, I'll be honest. You know, the parents saw it as a positive. I'd not actually stepped over to the dark side, shall we say, where you are no longer a parent and become the coach and manager, which is a really, really big transition for anybody. And you listen to the parents, and I think at the outset, I was trying to please the parents more than I was trying to please the children. So it's quite difficult, but at the same time, trying to acknowledge what those children have, what they need, and how they want to develop. There's one thing that will always stay with me, and you don't need to have played football in order to be a football coach, because whatever cohort or whatever group of children that you've got, that game will develop with those group of children. And I think because I'd inherited a team, they had won all last season barring one game. So the last game of the previous season, before the manager hung his boots up, they had won. And also their transition was going from 7v7 to 9v9. So there was a huge learning curve for the players, for the parents. I was kind of there because obviously I'd not worked on the 7v7. I was going straight into 9v9. So for me, yeah, it was tough. It was really tough to start off with because there was an expectation that this team would still continue to win, even though there was a massive transition into a new arena.
Yeah, I remember when I came to see you, you spoke about, again, not having to know everything about football. I remember when you were demonstrating one of the things, like you got the kids to demonstrate it, and it was just a really clever way of, and something that we talk about when we deliver coach development events is actually it doesn't have to be you who's demonstrating it. Like get the kids to do it. And I think the advantage as well is that, one, if we're feeling like we're lacking a bit of confidence and thinking I'm going to mess up here, so I don't want to be the one demonstrating it, so that helps us. But also I remember working with young players, and actually even if you are a coach who has played the game, sometimes if you're the one demonstrating, you're giving them an unrealistic view of what it should look like. Whereas if you get one of their peers to do it, that's, if it's also an under 7 that's showing it, like they can relate to that probably more than they can relate to us. So I think that was a really clever way when I came out to see you of you almost getting around that, but it was actually just as beneficial to the kids as well. You spoke about that transition from being a parent to a coach. I remember when I started coaching, I was 16, and I got roped into taking my cousin's under 7s, and he still reminds me of it now because I'm really harsh on him anyway, but I was probably harsher on him than I was anyone else. I remember I think he learnt this off my granddad, but he always used to moan to the ref, because my granddad did that when we went to watch Sheffield Wednesday. So he'd always moan at the ref. Remember, we were in this tournament and he's just moaning and moaning at the ref. And I'm like 16, just started coaching, not really like had any coach development or anything. And he's moaning and moaning, and I've just gone, Oliver, if you don't stop moaning, I am dragging you off this pitch. And I remember the daggers that my auntie gave me, like, that was uncalled for. Why have you just called him out in front of everyone? But it was so hard to like shift from, in my perspective, that role of cousin to now coaching. I'm just wondering how you found that switch from parents coach with your own children.
Yeah, I'm lucky because Milo was chuffed that I'd got the position. I'll be honest. But he also understood the difficulties. He understood it because, unfortunately for him, he saw what some of the parents were saying and some of the parents were doing. So he witnessed things that he shouldn't have seen. It was tough. But at the same time, he was really supportive. But yeah, I totally get it. I was probably harder on him. And I didn't build a team around my son, which a lot of coaches, for the ease of those dynamics at home, do that. And I get it. I totally get it. But what I try to do is create a team rather than work a team around an individual. And that wasn't just necessarily my son, because obviously there was five players out of the 9, the 10 that I had that had been there, for a long-standing time, and they were obviously the more senior, more mature, probably more technically able and skillful players. But I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for a team. So the difficulty I had was that parents felt that their players should have been playing somewhere else. Because they look at their individual. And as a parent, I do it now. I mean, I went and watched Milo at the end of the day, at the end of the second half on Sunday after I'd come back from my own team. And I saw what was happening, and I kind of felt like, well, actually, I wouldn't have done it that way. But also, it's really difficult because as a parent now, I see it from both sides. So I'm kind of sat on the fence. So I'm trying to cheer the team on because they belong to my club, but at the same time, trying to cheer my son on because that's what he deserves as my son. Milo's quite well-rounded, but there did come a time in the seasons that I had, the under 11s that then went on to under 12s, where he actually walked off halfway through the first half. because he was the most senior player and the other players were just not up to his standard, apart from one. And these two players were playing and they both ended up walking off saying, we can't do this anymore. So that's really tough, because then you're having to manage that on the sideline. And it's not because he was my son, and it wasn't because he's, you know, and knew his mate either. It's just because they could, you know, my son helps me coach. He comes with me now on the under-7s. So even at an early stage, he started helping me coach, coming along, just doing like picking the balls up, making his own notes, feeding in some ideas. And so he's reading the game differently. And that's what we look at as coaches. And that's what, correct me if I'm wrong, scouts look at. They don't look at that, just that technical ability. They're looking at that skillful player, which is somebody that can read the game, which is coachable, which is, you know, somebody that can take on feedback and then go out there and deliver it. It's not always about that technical ability. And that's something that I've really, really learned, especially now that I'm on the UEFA C as well. You know, you look at things in a lot more detail on this course, and if it's one thing I've learned, it solidifies and consolidates everything that I've been doing for the past 5 years. It's just a good position to be in, and you know, I'm feeling probably slightly more confident. Don't get me wrong, I still have my areas of doubt, and you know, I was on with my coach developer last night, and I was saying, actually, I don't think I'm that confident in technical language. But then when I think about it, I probably use too much technical language because I've been with the under-10s, under-11s, under-12s, and then now I'm with the under-7s, so I'm having to bring that back. So yeah, it's really, really tough coaching your own children, and I totally get it. But ultimately, the most important thing to think about is developing a team and not making a team around an individual, despite the dynamics at home. And it's being open with your own child. And that's how Marlo and I have been, you know, even like, you know, with his sister and my husband, you know, we've just been totally honest, and they've been totally supportive of that. So any issues that we've had at a game, we've spoken about, not in the car, but when we've come home over a cup of tea or over tea, say, well, how do you think you could have done that better? Yeah, okay. I never ever gave my son my coaching plans or told him what we were doing before a training session. Why would I put him at the advantage of everybody else? I wouldn't. So, and that's what parents didn't see. They didn't see that behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm dying to know how you dealt with when he walked off the pitch.
At that moment in time, we were probably 11-0 down. So I had a good rapport with the managers, and the pep talk was around, we're here, it's fun, let's go for it. If we score, we score. If we don't, we don't. Milo, I said to him, if you don't want to go on, you don't go on, and that's the end of it. And I just ignored him. And that's how it was dealt with, you know. And he sat there, and what he was saying is like, well, what we needed to do is this, and what we needed to do with that. So he actually turned it around and started coaching. So he actually started to talk to me about what was happening. And then when my other senior player walked off, that's when I knew it was time to say, do you know what, perhaps this isn't the team. This team is not ready. You know, you get into the second season of under-12s, which is where we were, and it's competitive. And I'd lost 4 players as a result of issues with parents and goodness knows what else. Milo and his mate had stayed on. Other players had moved on and had trials and were playing up a year, which was great for me as a coach, because obviously I delivered what I needed to deliver. My son now plays up a year, so what I'd done for him was great. But it was time to think about the well-being of those individuals. You know, they were there for the fun of it. They were there for just playing a game of football. They weren't there for that competitive edge. And that's when I started having discussions with Paul and saying, look, you know, I can't send these guys out week on week and they're getting defeated. They're not ready for this competitive edge. If I'd have had him the previous year when it was still non-competitive, then we could have developed that. But they've missed out on that. So I had like probably the best part of like 9 players that had missed out on that. So I started the second season in under-12s with 9 new players. And that's tough. That's tough going. And now when I look back on it, we probably have 4 players that still attend on a Saturday. And those are the 4 players that obviously wanted to play. The rest of them were just there to enjoy a game of football. So we made that right decision because of their well-being, and they're enjoying it more now than they ever have done. So it's kind of, you've got to look at that, you've got to balance it, and you've got to think to yourself, is it because we want to win, or is it because we want to look after the individual, or is it because these kids want it? And the parents were brilliant and they got it. So I was really lucky.
Yeah, I think what you talk about there is almost managing that expectation of yourself, because again, I think a lot of coaches go into it, and where a lot of the frustration comes from for coaches is that they're trying to either get results, or they're like talking to players about doing certain things and applying certain strategies and tactics, and they can't do it, and then that's where the frustration stems, and where we see perhaps some of the behaviours from the coaches on the sideline, because they're getting frustrated that the players can't do what they're wanting them to, or what they're asking them to do. But what you've done is you've recognised where they're at in their stage of development. You've recognised the reason why some of those individual players are there, and not all of them are necessarily there to win football matches and to be competitive. Would you say there's anything that, like, where has that come from in terms of, and you spoke about, you know, you're a primary teacher. Has that role helped you in any way to like manage your own expectations just based on what's kind of applicable from teaching to coaching?
It does, because obviously within, you know, I've got a class of 29 and I have quite a high send within my special needs within my class. So you always aim for high. That's what you do. But then you always have to consider who's going to fall behind and what you're going to do in order to bridge that gap. So yeah, it does. I think a lot of it is down to the fact about knowing people and knowing individuals. You know, I think, you know, being a nurse has helped, because obviously you observe people all the time. Being a mum is probably the best tool that most can have. You know, you get to know little children, you get to know kids' traits, you get to know when they're not quite sure, you read them better. But just being around children generally, you understand them. I mean, you know, on a Saturday, I start coaching at 8:30. You know, we have foundation for an hour, and then we progress our age brackets up all the way through till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm there from Saturday. I've been there for the past 5. I actually had a lie-in on Saturday till 10 o'clock. But I've been there every single week. I did my level 1 online. So missing out on the actual face-to-face and the practicals was a real worry for me when I did my level 1, because obviously it was COVID at the time. But having the opportunity and finding a club where you can say, do you know what, can I come down at 9 o'clock and just observe, take a load of notes. If you're collecting the balls in, which is what I did, collect the balls in, speak to the coaches, speak to the people that are delivering. What are you trying to do here? And it's just getting to know the children that you're working with. It doesn't matter what age. I mean, you know, we've got under 13s, you know, that are moving up to under 14s. And yeah, I'm probably slightly more militant with them than I am the younger ones. But it's a laugh, it's a joke, you know, and you can have more banter, and it's adjusting yourselves to meet the needs of those age groups, really. And it's just gaining as much experience as you can. So I'm lucky, you know, I've got a lot of help and support from the FA, and I've got a lot of help and support from the club. I'm the only female coach in my club. But yeah, if there's any issues, then the guys will say, go to Karen if Paul's not around. So it's kind of, and that's the respect. You know, the kids come over to you and it's like, Karen, I've done this at the weekend, or Karen, come and have a look at what I can do now. And, you know, and they're all there, but that's the ethos of the club, and that's what we promote. So yeah, it does help having the experience of a teacher. It helps the experience of being a mum, just your everyday skills, just get to know people, you know, just getting to know people, getting to know the kids, get on their level, you know, kneel down when you're talking to them, honestly. I mean, I have to look up at the under 13s because they're all taller than me. So, you know.
No, and that really jumped out when I came to see you. And we have a workshop, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end, called Stepping Over the Sidelines. and we try and encourage mums and like just females, whether they've played the game or not, to just take that step into coaching. And first task that we do is asking them questions about, are you a parent? Have you ever looked after a child, like babysat for them? Are you the social organizer amongst your friendship group? What do you do for a job? Like, because all of those skills, like you've just alluded to there, you're pulling different skills from different roles that you've got in your life, and you're applying them to coaching, and all of the combination of all of those things contributes to how good you are as a coach. So yeah, it's really, really nice to kind of hear that. In terms of where was I going with this? You spoke about observation as a nurse. I'm just my mum's a trained nurse, and she also always says, she'll just pick up on stuff. She'll know when I'm in a mood before even I know I'm in a mood. And yeah, I'm just wondering like where that comes from a nursing perspective.
I think it's just inbred. I don't know. You know, you learn a lot of people skills. I think, you know, if you're in a role that you deal with people face to face, I think it enables you to develop those senses. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do is non-verbal. So I'll look at people, their facial expressions, how they talk, where their eye contact is, their tone, before I even establish where they are, if that makes sense. You know, if I look at my players, you know, I've got really confident players, and I've got those that are less confident, even in my under sevens. But I know as soon as they walk on that pitch on a Thursday evening, whether they've had a good or bad day at school. I know whether their mums and dads have told them off whilst they've been in the car. You know, I know if they're late, it's generally because they've gone to KFC because they've had nothing to eat on the way. So, and they'll come and tell me, you know, and that's great, because that relationship is already there and they trust me to do that. And I'm not going to, you know, there's no point barracking a player. There's no point, you know, it doesn't matter what they've done. You've got to turn it around. It's kind of, you know, asking them those questions. Well, how could you have done that better? What am I looking for? You know, why did you do that? Just explain to me why you did, so I can understand what your decision making was, because I can't see in your brain. I don't know why you did that. So explain to me. So it's kind of, when I'm coaching, as much as I've got my own set plan, sometimes I'll diversify, and it won't always be what's on paper. You know, it will change. And sometimes I've got a plan for a Saturday, and then like on Saturday, I got the group of non-players. You know, plus I got 2 level 1 trainee coaches as well from one of the academies, that's local. They wanted to tag on with me for whatever reason. So it was kind of, right, okay, I've got all this to deal with now. So I couldn't do the planning that's set. So it's kind of in the back of my mind. I've got, well, what can I do that's simple, but they can still learn from it? What links into what we've still done? You know, and it's just making sure you lay out your expectations to start off with. And I have probably 4 or 5, and that's 1, we have fun, 2, you've got good listening, 3, you're looking, 4, you don't talk when the coach is talking, and 5, your foot's on the brake, which means you don't bounce the ball, move the ball, or do anything until I say so. And that's it. And it just works, you know. But yeah, I'm kind of firm but fair, but at the same time nurturing. So, and they've got to get to know you. So it's your personality. Coaching is about your personality. It's about, you set the tone for that session. If you're in a bad mood, then there's no, you know, then that session is going to be in about, it's going to go pear, or the kids are not going to enjoy it. You know, don't get me wrong, you know, I can walk out the door here and I've had an argument with my daughter or my son on a Thursday evening, and by the time I've got to training, you know, I've got my happy face on again. Because those children that I coach with, I've got to see that, because it's all about them. So you've got to be able to break away and just basically shelve stuff It's tough. It's a tough gig. I'm not gonna, you know, but it's something you learn. You know, and I don't know, being a nurse, being a mum, being a teacher, I've worked in business as well. So, you know, I've done all sorts of stuff in, you know, I'm not young anymore. So it's all just pulling on everything that you've done, but it's getting to know your team, getting to know your players. That's what it's about. And your sessions have got to be fun, and that fun comes from you. It doesn't come from anybody else. Forget about the parents at the sideline. It's about them kids and what they need and why they're coming. You know, what is the reason what is the reason they're there? Do they want to, they might want to be a Premier football player, but you're a small part of that journey. And you can have a massive impact. And that's the way I look at it. You know, and if I make my sessions fun, then they're going to remember me when they're earning their multi-millions. So they might not share any, but they might remember me.
Yeah, I think that's the power of coaching. Like you might be the highlight of their week. Everything else might not be great for them at home or at school. But yeah, if we can be the highlight of their week, then we've done our job. You mentioned about the support that you've had from the FA. Just tell us a bit about that and how it's helped you on your journey.
Oh, crikey. It was actually Paul who put me in contact with Sarah Loden. So over COVID, obviously that was a really tough time because I'd just qualified. There wasn't much training going on, then training stopped, yet I still wanted to learn. So there was a lot of like face-to-face team Zoom calls with Sarah where we're talking about some of the issues and the challenges that I've got with the team that I had at the time. I've also attended sort of like women's groups, football groups locally. Obviously, I live in Chorley, and these were down at Westway at Exton, and that's where I met Christian Clarkson, who's now he's my mentor, but he doesn't necessarily mentor me now, which is really strange. He just generally pops down and make sure that I'm okay, and we catch up once in a while, and I meet with a group of female coaches, which is great. So if you can tap into an FA mentor, they'll have like a WhatsApp group, and often they'll have like sessions put on by other people that are more experienced than you. You can actually magpie some of those ideas and have a chat about where you are, how you're moving forward, and it's great. And you can put ideas in, I'm struggling with this, anybody got anything with that? So that's what I do there. And then obviously there's yourself, Bex, who we met, and who scared me to death. So and it's just having that. I mean, obviously now I've got my coach developer as a result of the UEFA, and all the coaches that are within that group. And that's really great because you just bounce ideas off each other and nobody judges you either. I think it's probably me that judges me and nobody else. Like I say, I still struggle with my confidence. I'm not going to say that I don't. I've had quite a difficult time with discrimination and parent bullying. At the same time, the FA was saying that I was really good and I was having all these campaigns and this filming, and Bex was coming out, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword at the time. One side is saying you're not so good, one side saying that you're brilliant, and you kind of sit in the middle of it and you're thinking, well, where do I sit? But you just have to learn to trust your instincts and go with it. But Peter Sturgis, I've worked with him as well. He actually came to our club. We were part of a pilot looking at fundamental skills and early years and bringing that into football. So that was awesome as well, because Paul kind of left me in charge of the session when he came down because he was on holiday, and I had like 4 or 5 coaches that I had to manage at the same time. So I've got a club that supports me, but then you only get what you get. You only get what you put in. So if you're showing your club that that's what you want to do, then you'll get something back. Obviously I've got my family as well, which have been exceptionally supportive. Whilst I'm doing the UEFA and stuff like this, obviously I'm not giving them the time. So you've got to try and find that balance and make sure you've got that understanding. So without all of these people, I wouldn't be able to do what I want to do. So yeah, But the FA support is there if you want it. If you're just starting out, find yourselves a mentor or find yourselves another coach locally that you can go and team coach with. You know, get that additional support, get those additional ideas. It's just awesome. There's loads of information out there that's available, but stick with what's recommended. Don't look on YouTube and have a look at the sessions, because they're all refined. You know, and you won't necessarily be able to do that in your session. You know, we were talking the other week about using whiteboards. Yeah, it worked for my under 10s, 11s and 12s, but it doesn't necessarily always work for my under 7s. Me writing down what the session's going to be and what we're going to get out of it. Some of them are still learning how to spell, never mind read. So, you know, putting that up on a board, it's great for the parents, but to be fair, the parents trust me enough in order to just deliver, and I'll just say to them, well, this is what we're going to look at today and this is why I'm doing it. Brilliant. And that's all they need to know. And they don't want to kind of infringe on what I'm doing, because my session might change and I don't want to tell them either. Because there might be something that happens in my session that means I'm not actually going to stick to that session plan. And that's when I come back and I reflect. So when you're doing your sessions, yeah, plan them, but always come back and spend that time to yourself thinking, well, what worked, what didn't, why did I change that? What was it about that? And yeah, I'm lucky because I'm a teacher and we do that all the time, every single lesson, every single day. So I'm used to doing that. So for some, it might be new, but that's what I'm saying. Find yourself somebody, find yourself a buddy. You know, that's what I've done with the FA. I was lucky I had Sarah and Christian and obviously Beck. So when I was going through a really rough time over the summer period, I know I messaged, you know, all of you and said, like, this is me. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Am I going to continue? I wasn't quite sure at that moment in time. So yeah, we all go through those periods, but it makes you stronger. And that's what it's all about, because without me, the team that I've got now wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And I do very little coaching again, but they are absolutely awesome. So their attitude is brilliant. And the way that they've gelled as a team since January has just been brilliant. And I kind of say to myself, do you know what? I've done that. Nobody else. I've done that. And that's what I take away from this. And my son, he's playing up. I did that. Nobody else did it. And sometimes you just have to step back and think to yourself, do you know what? There are some positives here.
Yeah. You spoke there about, and you've spoken quite a lot over tonight about the club and how supportive they've been. And I think that's probably a message to everyone, is it's about finding the right club and the right environment for you as well, and not being afraid to, you've not necessarily walked away from the club, but you switched teams and found a group that worked for you. But yeah, there's been examples of coaches that I've spoken to that have gone, the club's not the right one for me, but I'm going to go and find one that is going to be supportive, is going to provide me with women's kit, is going to you know, look at ways in which they might buddy me up with someone else to help me out. So yeah, I think it's not being afraid to and doing your research if you are looking for a club or a provider to get involved with, like what does their website tell you about the environment that they create for their players, because that will tell you a lot about the environment that they create for the coaches.
Yeah,
but it also gives you a basis to question things. So if a club's shouting on their website about, we are an inclusive club and we're all about being the kids having a great time and equal playing time, but then you go in and that's not the case, if that's written on their website and in their philosophy, that gives you something to challenge against. But yeah, I think it's doing that research. Often we just fall into a club because we get roped into helping our son or daughter's team, or we might have played for that team, that club, and we start to take a younger age group, and it probably becomes a bit safe for us. But I think it's about, like you said, taking that step back and going, is this the right environment for me? And if it's not, again, your local county FA can help you to perhaps find an alternative club. I'm just we've kind of talked about really where you're at now with your coaching, but I just wanted to touch upon when I came down to see you, and you have talked about it a little bit tonight. You now start to, I'm laughing because when I was there, you were you had someone helping you, and you were like, right, he's going to do this, and then I was laughing because you were getting a bit frustrated that he wasn't doing what you'd asked him to do. But you are now starting to help other coaches, aren't you? And almost probably take on a bit of that mentoring role yourself with some of the other coaches. How's that evolved for you?
Yeah, it's going. It's a bit overwhelming, to be fair, because all our coaches at our club are probably 6 foot, so and I'm only 5'5". So it's kind of like mutual, I think, and there's a respect now. I think when I first started, it was kind of, oh, it's just somebody, just another parent. And I think that's the difference. And I'm not just another parent. Yeah, I am a parent, don't get me wrong. And, if something's not right for Milo, I'll speak up. So, as with my husband, but there's that mutual respect of all the coaches. I'm the only one who's doing the UEFA C or is doing the level 2. Everybody else is stuck at that level 1. So, and the support for tonight, the guys all know that I'm doing this, and I've had WhatsApp messages all day long, so it's great. And obviously with the filming that we did last year, and obviously I was on the inspirational guest speaker up in Oldham, I think it was last year as well. The guys are really, really supportive. Coaching, yeah, I mean, this weekend or just gone, it was a bit strange because they're only young lads. They're from the Steve Gerrard Academy up in Exton, and they started at 9. I came on at 10. They'd done a session in the morning, but it's the fact that they were doing keepy ups at the side when they should have been doing something. And it's kind of, well, you need, it's kind of that teacher mode kicks in, or that mum mode kicks in. It's like, well, you can't be doing that. You need to do this. And then they look at you and they're like, well, I play football. Yeah, but you're not playing football, you're coaching now, and you need to get to know the kids, and that isn't there, and then like after the session, it was like, Paul asked me, what was my feedback? And I went, honestly, and it gave me. So yeah, there's that mutual respect, and Paul's great, because even tonight he's phoned me and he's asked me again about, what are my views for moving forward? Where do I want to do? What do I want to do? Don't forget the club. What did I think of the guys at the weekend? How can they improve? Because he's got to give feedback. So yeah, it's mutual. It's great. I just think it's having that self-belief, and as much as everyone says I come across confident, I'm not. I'm a duck. I'm paddling away underneath, and I might be the swan on top, but I'm not. Some sessions, I mean, Paul asked me to take the under-13s the other week, and I said no, because I know how boisterous they can be, and I'd already said, well, no, I want to take the under-10s, under-11s, but I guess, and because I've now stepped back into that under-7s role, I kind of think that that's too far a gap. But at the same time, I think to myself, what I could do the under-7s, I can still differentiate for those under-13s, and they probably still enjoy it. We do things like, if it's really hot, we'll just do like football, cricket, and we'll do that for the whole coaching session. But there'll be some different challenges within there, or we'll do football, tennis, and it's kind of, we do everything that suits those needs of the children, and everything takes we take everything into consideration. And often when Paul goes away, it's me that gets the keys, and it's me that's going down there and setting up at 8:30 in the morning, and I'm there till 1:15, 1:45, and the guys are running off and going back to the families. So there is that mutual respect. But yeah, it's a bit daunting to start off with, especially when you're giving feedback to people who have got more experience than you. The coach you were referring to had only just qualified. So he actually took it on the chin, but then 2 days later sent me a message stating that he didn't actually agree with what I said. So but it's kind of the devil in the deep blue sea, and when we had a discussion about it, it's going back and saying, well, why did you disagree with what I said? You weren't actually doing what was expected. The children, you weren't engaging with the children. I was trying to help you progress your session, because I could see that the kids were getting bored with that session. I saw that, you saw that, so it's kind of moving it on. And in all fairness, he's now struggling because he just wants to coach, And, you know, very often in his sessions, he's doing 1v1, 2v2, 1v2, you know, and there's, you know, and he needs to differentiate that. So he's now asking people for ideas, which is great, because now he's realizing that what we were talking about way back in that summer period is, yeah, it's about moving forward all the time. And that's what you've got to do. You know, as a coach, you can't stand still. You've got to be reading, you've got to be looking, you've got to be thinking how you can move things forward. You know, kids evolve, you know, they go to school and they play new games. You've got to be able to bring those new games into your drills, into your warm-ups, because if you don't do that, then things are going to become staid again. And I think coaching's moved on massively, especially after speaking to some of the guys on the UEFA who've been coaching for probably 16, 20 years, when they did their level 1 and now doing their level 2. And some of the stuff they're seeing is like, you know, they're seeing things like handball, and, you know, it's not ball to foot. It literally is handball. You're doing chest passes, or you're doing tag using bibs, and they're like, oh, I wouldn't do that with my, you know, with my under 16s. Well, why not? You know, it's the same principles. You know, the principles are there. You know, and it's all invasion games, and that's what we're doing. So you've got, you know, you've got to be prepared, I think, just to put that little bit of extra effort in. You can't just rack up at your training session and think, oh, I'm going to do that today. You've really got to think about what you're doing and what you want to achieve, or what you want your kids to achieve. You know, it's so important.
Yeah. No, all really good. And I'm conscious we've talked for an hour. We've got a couple of comments coming in on the chat box, and we have had a question. 2 of the comments that have come in are around it's difficult when the club maybe isn't supportive, or the club or the people within it, whether that's parents or club representatives, see you as not having as much experience as others, or as what is expected. And I guess you might have an answer on this, Karen. You've spoken a lot about the different experiences you've got that you could bring to coaching, but if it's someone at the very start of their journey who maybe hasn't got that teaching background or that nursing background, it can be really quite challenging. I guess my response to those comments would be, again, when you go into that club or provider, it's probably just about being really open and honest with them about what you can bring. So again, doing that bit of work prior to going in, to almost go in with like, this is what I can bring. So it might be,
yeah,
you know, I played a bit at school, or I was captain at school, or like Karen, you mentioned that your background was like martial arts, volleyball, netball. It might be a different sport that you've played, but again, it's what you're bringing. So it's probably just taking that time to do that bit of analysis of yourself to tell the club what you can bring, and then hopefully you can work with them, and they will find the right group for you to work with. Like, again, when I was 16 and I started out coaching, it was comfortable for me to coach the under 6s and 7s. But if they'd have turned around to me and said, can you coach the under 18 men's, I'd have been like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not experienced enough to do that. But I found my comfort zone with those younger age groups, and then over time they asked me to take the girls under 10s, and it just grew from there. Because once I was in a group that I was comfortable with and that I could thrive in, they started to see what other skills and what other potential I did have, and they started offering me more. I don't know if you've got
I totally agree. I think we need to be careful, because coaching isn't about knowing the game of football. Coaching's about knowing your children and what you can offer those children. And I think that's something that I've taken away, and something that somebody has always said to me. It's not about what you know, it's about how you can move forward. You know, I think making yourself available and giving yourself a presence within a club, which is what I've done, by just attending, even if it is just, like I said, collecting the balls and watching what they're doing, making your presence known makes a big difference. The only person that can change anything is you as an individual. You know,
can I just just come in on that? I mean, it is a fascinating balance here that you've highlighted, because your transferable skills are fantastic. It's lovely to hear, you know, because my background's in counselling and psychology, and to hear you talk about person-centered approach, etc. And I think there's some massive transferable skills that you bring from being a nurse and a teacher, and yet we're also so there's a piece of that, but then you've also started to mention your A for C and whatever, and that's important. But I think what's really nice, you keep coming back to knowing your players, and just to share some of the work that the women have been doing on the Pepsi program, is that we talked at one session around the C system and talked about connections, and all what you described about half an hour ago was just having great connections with the kids and identifying their needs. I think the real challenge in coaching is that, you know, we have coaches who go on to all these qualifications, and then they're absolutely obsessed with the technical, tactical and physical piece. And that's important, of course it is. However, you and all the good coaches out there are all talking about, but you need to know your players, whether they're 7, 16, 25, 30, whatever, you know, and I think that again, for the Pepsi group, just affirms some of the stuff we've been talking about. And it's great to hear you start to talk about that, Karen, because I'm not convinced even now whether we've got a lot of that coming out into the system.
No, I mean, I think it goes back to the environment and the club ethos, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, and there's only, like I say to you, the only person that can make a difference is you, and it's small steps. You know, I've been doing this now for 6 years. I started out as a parent volunteer and I've progressed my way through, but the only way I have got to come on events like this as a guest speaker and do other stuff is because I've made my presence known and I've made my views known. And the only way I've done that is by attending sessions, by collecting the balls, by making notes, by standing next to other coaches and looking at what they've done, by talking to parents and saying, what is it you want? What is it you really want? Why do you want that? Why is your son more important than the other one? And trying to understand that as a coach and just having general conversations. But it really, really is. Coaching isn't about the game of football. It's about those individuals that we are, you know, that we are trying to progress and develop. We're not just developing them into being good footballers. Probably, I don't know, 80% of them will never play football again when they hit the age of like 15, 16 because of high school and other stuff. But they may go on to doing other sports, basketball, swimming, whatever. But the same principles and ethos and whatever, you know, you've done as an individual, you've instilled in them, they can carry with them. It's the same when they go to primary school, when they go to nursery, when they get to high school. You know, when you go to a job, you know, if you're in a good position and that company, that school, that primary school has got a really good ethos, then you're going to take examples of that. I mean, how many of us are sat here today and think, do you know what? I remember such and such as my teacher and I remember them because, or I remember such and such who was my boss because they were, and it's those little elements. And as a coach, we're exactly that. You know, we're that individual.
I guess Holly's question around, she said, what are the warning signs that the kids are getting aboard and are not engaged? I think we potentially probably know those. But it's like how, again, it's about you identifying that lovely skill of knowing your players, because you'll know that individuals are getting bored.
And I think, you know, the younger the players are, the more activities you probably need to plan in. You might not necessarily need to use them. I mean, I've had my under 7s now since October. When I first started with them, our warm-up activities might be, you know, a progression of one activity, and it might only be like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, because that was their concentration span. But now, because they know what's going on, I can probably do one activity for 15 minutes and then move on, because I know my players. And it's the same with any age group. You will see it. And it really, really is just getting to know your children. And you can do that by doing simple warm-up activities, or, I mean, you know, Saturday we had quite a lot of children that had not been for a while. And I asked the players, well, what do you want to do for a warm-up? Can we do 1, 2, 3 run, and then we have to touch the floor and come all the way back again? If that's what yeah, come on, let's go and do that then. And then I'd ask another player, so instead of touching the floor, what we're going to do? Well, we're going to sit on our bottoms. And it was muddy. So they love the fact that they're going to, like, I'm going to go, what, you know, and they're running and they're legging it across the field, you know, but it's kind of getting them to choose rather than you choose. And then that gives them that comfort that you're actually going to listen to them. So it's just utilising the skills that we or everybody already has, whether you've got children, whether you haven't. You know, you speak to other individuals of all ages, and it's basically just utilising that and just bringing it down to that age group. But there's there is only one person that can do that, and that's you as an individual.
You also picked up, Karen, another piece that we touched on in the Pepsi sessions, about reflection.
Yeah,
it's something that as a coach developer, I constantly talk about. I'm just keen to unpick a bit more of, because I talk about the 3 things, you know, what went well, what would you change, and what have you learned? And what how many times do you reflect? And I think I say this hundreds of times to coaches I work with. I'm not expecting to write war or peace, but do you have, what's your go-to kind of reflection process?
After every I train every Thursday with my team, and I will sit in the car for 10-15 minutes after my session. I have a notebook in my car, and I'll have a plus, a minus, and a tick. And that tick is basically, you know, what the kids have said. I'll ask the children, what do you think went well? What do you think we could do better? And what do you want to do better next time? So then next training session, I'll have a look at what they've said. But underneath that, then I'll have my own. And it takes 10-15 minutes. And it's like a 15-minute drive back home. And I'll think about that. And then once I've done that, I might write a few notes, and that's it, me done. And you know, I plan on a 4-week basis, so I have 1 or 2 things that I look at every 4. You know, I'll have different activities for 4 weeks. So we're just looking at spatial awareness and channels at the moment. So position. So I've already done 2 weeks of that. So I'll plan that for 3 weeks, and then on the 4th week, I'll look at everything that I've done, and then I'll put another plan together for that 4th week, which will pick up on some of the areas that I know that they need to kind of embed or get better at. Every session, I know I could do 2 or 3 things, but they'll only ever take 1 thing home. And that's what we need to be mindful of. And at the end of every session, I always ask the children, tell me 1 thing that you've learned, and you can't go back to your mum and dad or your adult till you've told me. And that's every single session I do that. And it might be that they'll say passing. Yeah, well, we do that every week. What else have you learned? Looking around, well, what do we call that? Scanning, right, okay, you know, and it's kind of like just building that vocabulary, building up their knowledge, building up, well, what does that mean? You know, like we've been doing handball with chest passes, and I do chest passes because they've actually got to look for their players rather than doing overheads. And that, you know, and we'll progress that on as they get older. But it's little things like that. So, but yeah, I probably spend 10-15 minutes, and it's kind of like, ask the children, write that down, and then reflect on what you think has gone well, what you could do better, and what you want them to achieve next time. Does that tally in with them? How are you going to, you know, balance that out? That's how I do it.
I wonder, Karen, as well, you started to talk about support from other coaches, and I wonder, being International Women's Day tomorrow, whether you see, because there's 1 or 2 of the coaches on the chat I've talked about, it's great that you've got a lot of support at your club, but evidently from some of the comments in the chat box, some of the coaches haven't got that support. Would you try and think about, you know, would you see value in speaking to other women in other environments that, you know, it's not football? Would you, you know, you look for support in other areas? Because obviously you've got your teaching background as well, where you probably talk to people in your staff room. Is that important to you?
I do, but I don't actually talk to people in the staff room. They talk to me.
I was just using that as an example.
I very
I've
rarely
been in
go
some of those staff rooms too.
to be honest, I very rarely go to the staff room. I don't have time. Yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be coaches from football. Like I say, coaching isn't about the game of football. You learn the game of football with the children that you're working with, and they will show you how they're going to play. All you're going to do is pick up on those skills and enhance those skills. And, you know, a lot of the time, what I found over the years is what you need is somebody just to listen to you, listen to the fact that, you know, mums and dads are calling you useless on the sidelines, are saying that, well, actually, my son should be playing there. She's got favourite players. She's not being really nice to my son, or, you know, she doesn't know what she's doing. You know, all this sort of stuff goes on all of the time. And 9 times out of 10, when I, you know, and I saw somebody asking what was the worst thing that happened on the sideline. I'm not quite sure who that was. But for me, the worst thing happening on a sideline is the fact that I used to go out with some of these parents. I was good friends with some of these mums, and we used to have social events once, twice a month. And that stopped for me, especially when I was squared off in a car park by one of the parents, when I received abusive messages on WhatsApp, when I was having the opposition at games telling me that my own parents were calling me an imbecile or a muppet or anything else that was going on the sidelines. But it's kind of closing that down and thinking, do you know what? Them kids walked off that pitch and they were smiling today. You know, apart from 1 or 2, the parents that weren't welcome left, which was absolutely fine by me. And I was quite thankful that they did. And when they did, the atmosphere changed totally. And that's when I realized it wasn't actually me, you know, that created that environment. It was them. And it's just being strong. So for me, it was like having somebody I could talk to about that, not necessarily about, well, little Billy can't dribble a ball properly. How do I do that? Or so-and-so's doing this. Those are the conversations that you have at your training sessions with your coaches in your clubs, you know. And
I think that Karen identifies the piece that we've known for years in coaching, that we don't support our coaches very well. And some of that support might come, hopefully does come from ourselves as coach developers. But equally though, Karen, I think there's a massive piece to help women get support from each other from different avenues of work. I mean, we've got, you know, the UK Sports England have got different ideas around trying to help us support that, and encourage every person on the PepsiCo program constantly on the sessions that we've done is they've got a WhatsApp group and support each other, just to put something on about, you know, it was a bit of a difficult session. How did you feel about that? But also maybe have other people in your social network that you can just have a chat with.
It is that. I mean, you know, I mean, like I say, I was the only female. Well, I am now the only female coach. I did have another female coach in the club, so I used to speak to her. But when she left, it was kind of like, well, that was it for me. You know, that was, but it wasn't. You know, the guys have been absolutely awesome, and it's because it goes back to that presence. You know, making sure you have a presence. It doesn't matter whether you are, you know, you are the most awesome coach in the club, or whether the parents think that you don't know what you're doing. It really, really doesn't matter. The fact that your face is there, and the fact that those children are seeing your face week in, week out, that's what you're there for. You're not there for the parents. You're not there for the other coaches, in all fairness. You are there for those children. And it's those children that see your face, and it's those children that will high five you, or fist bump you, or give you a smile, or come and run over to you and say, can you do my laces for me? I can't do them yet, and I'm 14 years of age, because they know they can come to you. Do you know? And that's the difference. And it's really, really hard to do. Don't get me wrong, guys. You know, it's taken me a long time. But you do need to be made of Teflon sometimes. You know, but things like this webinar, you know, the clubs, you know, the club or the environment that you belong in, the WhatsApp group, use it. You know, even if you just go in there and you think it's a really stupid question, there is no such thing as a stupid question. You guys out there are really, really lucky that you've got this avenue, because I didn't have this avenue. You know, I've learned the hard way. I've gone through a really, really rough patch, and I would hate anybody else to go through what I went through. So please utilize the WhatsApp group that you've got. Utilize Sarah, utilize Paul, utilize Bex, utilize, you know, the Women in Football Forum. That's what it's there for, you know, and you're really lucky to have it. So utilize it. What
behaviour, Karen, have you worked really hard on that surprised you coming back from a nursing background, a teaching background, now coaching? What sort of coaching behaviour you've gone, wow, didn't realise I was having to work on that?
Being overly critical, I think, is the biggest thing. And I wouldn't say of players, I would say of myself.
Yeah.
You know, I have exceptionally high expectations. I am a perfectionist, and I know there's no such thing. But I am overly critical of myself. I don't have, I mean, I was saying the same thing to Pat, who's my coach developer, last night. I worry now, even today, that I don't have enough technical knowledge. Even doing the UEFA, you know, I went on my first face-to-face weekend, and there are guys there that have been coaching for years and years and years. And they were talking about, why do we delay? What's a delay? And all. And I'm sat there thinking, I've read that technical guide, but for the life of me, I can't remember what a delay is. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then somebody said, do you know what? All it is when a player just has to wait. Oh, right, okay, you know, I know what you're talking about now. And I've got a couple of sessions about that. So sometimes it's like, I was sat there and I was thinking to myself, I am out of my depth. I am so out of my depth. But actually, you're not. It's just the fact that people use different language. People have got different ways of learning. I'm very hands-on and very visual. You know, I like to see something modelled so I understand what I'm doing, and which is why I go down to the club on a Saturday to do that. But it's just have self-belief, but yeah, overly self-critical. I really, really am overly self-critical.
I think that's an interesting piece there, Karen. We could go on for hours about that one, about talking
as a psychologist.
Because what you're talking about there, about people use jargon,
yeah,
to protect themselves and to make
absolutely
it a bit I'm in this club and you're not, because you don't understand the jargon. And again, it's part of our coach developing world. We have to start to break that down a bit, because so what, you don't know what a delay is, whatever that is, it doesn't matter, does it? It's about actually knowing the game and knowing the principles. But and I think, again, that's, I think, where the support comes in. Is it's okay actually to show that you're vulnerable. It's okay. That's what we want. That's what we want our players to be. Our players are vulnerable every time they go on the pitch or the training pitch. So it's okay for us to feel vulnerable, but a lot of coaches don't like feeling vulnerable.
They don't know. And to be fair, what was quite an eye-opener on my first face-to-face for the UEFA is the amount of female coaches that felt that they had to justify their teams and their position. You know, there was a lot of female coach. Well, I say a lot, there was probably 6 or 7. And I was listening. I'm quite a listener. I say very little, to be honest, believe it or not. And there was quite a few of them that were saying like, oh yeah, you know, we've got players that are in ECT and we've got players doing it RCT, and we're not actually being challenged, and we're top of the league, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, and they could do this and they could do that, and I'm only doing this course because I need to tick a box, and I'm there and I'm listening, and then one of the girls turned around and said, so where do you coach? And I said, I coach for a club in Chorley. And they said, is it an academy? And I said, no. Do you have any players ECT? No. So why are you here? I say, I'm here for my players. I'm here because I want to do something different. I'm also here because I want to support people like you. And she went, what do you mean? So I said, well, bring me your players down to our club. So she said, why? So I said, because being a good footballer isn't all about the technical skill. And she just looked at me and she went, yeah, but they can read the game too. I said, it's not just about that either. I said, it's about the social interaction. It's about them being able to fit into a different team, because on a Saturday, we mix our teams up. They are not with their team players, because we want them to be able, because they might not stay with us, they might go to another club, you know, in time. So they've got to be able to have that ability, to have that social interaction, to actually build relationships with other individuals. And it was quite an eye-opener. And I just kind of thought to myself, you know, I'm not here to be elitist. I'm here because I want to do something for other individuals. You know, if I wanted to, I could probably, you know, strive and get me B and do everything that I want to do, you know, and you know, progress, you know, been quite successful in the careers that I've had, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want to make a difference. And that's what a lot of coaches need to ask themselves. Why are you coaching? You know, even as a female, why are you coaching? Male, why are you coaching? You know, and I think that's a really important question to ask oneself, because that's the reflective piece. And you asked me about reflection, and that's something that I reflect on all of the time. Why am I doing this? And if I'm not still doing it because I want to make a difference and to make sure that those little kids or bigger kids become a better person overall, then that's when I'll stop coaching. Or if I can't help another coach to develop, because ultimately what I want to do is I want to go out there and I want to share some of the experiences I've had, like I've done tonight, and, you know, inspire those individuals to say, do you know what? Yeah, I made the right choice, and I want to do this, and I want to move forward, and I want to take on a team, and I want to help them. That's what I want to do. So if I'm not doing that, then you know, that's when I'll hang my boots up. So at the moment, I'm in a good place.
Karen, I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah, I've not eaten yet, Bex.
Amazing conversations. We've spoken a lot about like that support, and you've alluded to some elements of support that you've tapped into, but I just, if I may, just share my screen and just introduce you to the team of coach development officers, specifically for women and girls and female coaches, through our work with the FA and England Football Learning. So this is our amazing team. Hopefully you can see it. I've got a pane down the side of the screen, but hopefully you can see everyone's picture. And yeah, we've got 8 regional coach development officers across the country whose sole purpose is to try and get more females into coaching and make sure they're supported along their journey. So that the guys work with their local county FAs to put on a range of different support mechanisms for coaches, and specifically for female coaches as well. Just a bit of an example of some of the stuff that we do. I think we've got one on with us tonight, actually. Ali is a community champion. We've got a number of those who sit within our wider team as well, who are there to deliver that stepping over the sidelines workshop, focus on those transferable skills that females can bring to coaching, and just try and get more in and help clubs and providers to recruit more female coaches. I think especially with the rise of female participation and the drive in and around the Euros and in the build up to the World Cup, we've massively increased female participation. We need to make sure that we've got the role models to be able to support that and have those female role models. Karen's mentioned about the mentoring, the one-to-one support at a local level, but we also have those wider, what we call coach development groups, and yeah, they are specific for supporting females, but the main purpose of it is to do a lot of the stuff that Karen just spoke about. It's, you know, a group where you can share the different challenges that you've got with each other, share ideas with each other, have that sounding board. So it's not just the people at the front of the room delivering the session as our coach development team, but also the people within the room sharing their experiences and sharing how they've overcome stuff, just like Karen has tonight. So most county FAs have got one of those groups now. And if you speak to your local county FA, they should be able to link you up with the local coach development group for females, and it's just that support network. There's regular workshops for them, but like Karen said and Paul's alluded to, there's also those WhatsApp groups that tend to get set up off the back of these workshops, where again people just drop ideas in or ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question, but I think sometimes in wider groups we're afraid to ask it, but actually having that safety, that safe network of people who are all like-minded and all going through similar experiences has been really quite powerful in the work that we've done. So those are just some of the opportunities that we have on offer for our female coaches across the country. We're also doing some work to get more people like myself and our team in as the female coach development workforce, because there's not enough of us. Again, when Karen walks into that UEFA C course, are there females in the room, but are there also some females at the front of the room who are inspiring and delivering that coach development course as well? So yeah, just wanted to share some of the opportunities that we have, and probably as we bring it to a close, unless there's any more questions, just thank you, Karen, so much for being so honest, being so authentic, sharing the highs, but also sharing the lows that you've experienced, showing your vulnerability, but also showing how you've overcome some of those challenges and those obstacles, and probably hopefully proving to a lot of people that have joined this call tonight that, yeah, we might get peppered by parents and we might have challenges from different people within the club, but actually we just got to stick at it and know that we're doing the right thing, and use your support network around you to help you to do that. Is there anything final from you, Karen, or Paul or Sarah, that you want to say?
No, I just want to say thanks very much for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure, and I really do hope everybody that's been on tonight moves forward and uses the support networks that they've got and just enjoy it. That's the best thing. My last piece is go out there and do it. Enjoy it, because it is good fun.
You could get that printed on some t-shirts, couldn't we, Paul? Very
much so. Enjoy it. Enjoy it with support. Really good, Karen.
Yeah.
Thanks for your commitment.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to Karen, Bex, and to Paul for your time tonight. Really enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight as well. Hope you've actually found it useful. Just, I suppose, on a passing note, just to say happy International Women's Day to everybody.